Back again. This is like the final project here on the ADU project here in Springfield, Oregon. Basically what we've done is built a house and attached an accessory dwelling to it, an ADU. There's one attached ADU, that's what they're called. And on this property there is a detached ADU. Part of what you can do when you are building an ADU, one of the relaxed ordinances or allowed to happen so that these buildings can be created on smaller lots, is that you are not required to have off-street parking for the ADUs. For the original house, I believe you have to have 2 off-street parking spots. You know, the roof of the homes collects water. It is allowed to go into the storm system for the city. You know, it's collected with the gutters, downspouts into pipe that are piped to the storm sewer. So part of the rules these days are, if you're going to do this, create parking spots, pave it, cover it, make it impermeable, you need to create a swale, a place for the water to go and percolate into the ground. Okay, so a swale, what's a swale? Basically it's a hole dug in the ground with some rock that will allow water to percolate through it. And on the top we will put dirt and particular types of vegetation and a bit of a low spot in the middle so that the water can go in there, percolate into the ground and go away. Really this is the first one I've done, it's the first one Tim's done, and we're just checking it the best we can. Basically the size of this swale is dictated by the amount of paving you are going to do. You know, basically about a foot of gravel, foot of dirt, and the water directed to it somehow. We need to slope this so that the water ends up in this swale. Limited somewhat by what we're dealt with here, right? We're up against the alley. We're not going to dig up and regrade the entire alley. So I'm trying to match the height of this slab with the slope coming off of this asphalt. I don't want water running towards the house, that's a given, and I need it coming from that end towards the swale. So water will no doubt slopes from that end to here, probably 4 inches and 28 feet or so. And then in this direction we're 16 feet, and it will slope about 3 inches away from the home. You know, you could be a little more aggressive with the slope, but that'll be fine. Any more than that and cars start rolling out of their parking spots and things like that. I have a couple tips on how to get these forms in here. You know, basically it comes down to how well you put the stakes in. Then you put forms up against the stakes, and whether it's straight or not is dependent on how well you put the stakes in. So a number of different ways to do it. For instance, here's a wall. I want the forms to be a certain distance away from the wall. Came out the amount where I wanted the concrete to be, 18 inches in this case, and I put a stake on each end at 18 inches. I put a string line from stake to stake, tightened it up. And then I went back and put my stakes 1.5 inches off of that line to the face of my stake. Most framing hammers are 1.5 inches. Here's 1.5 inch spacer that I can use to gauge from my string where I want that stake to be. When you're putting stakes in, sometimes you can steer them where you want them to go. You don't have to necessarily pull it all the way out and try it again. If I want it to be over that way, I might steer it over that way as I'm pounding it, and then bring it back up, and it'll want to move one way or the other. And then I set basically the 4 corners of these forms. I knew this point, 3 feet in, right there. I knew what height I wanted that, so I set the other end, and I made it straight. I didn't use a string line. I just got down on the ground and put my eye on it. Even if I'm by myself, I would see, okay, it needs to come up a little bit. I'd run to the middle, and sometimes I run, and then I pick it up a little bit, then I go to the end and check. If it needed to go down a little bit, I'd tap it down. Now we need to make sure the gravel is at the proper grade. Sometimes people are able to grade before they put the forms in, and they're setting the forms to the grade. I didn't know quite where grade needed to be, so we had to set the forms in place first. And now we're going to bring grade to the forms. I want this slab to be, I don't know, at least 4.5 inches is just fine with me. I've got this real nice straight I have to lay this board flat to get it to lay flat because it's got a crown in it. But it is flat. Now I can set it from form to form and go underneath and sort of measure how much gravel's underneath there. You know, this is a muck rake. I know this is 3.5 inches. It's almost 4 inches actually. And depending on how tall I stand that, I mean, I can see whether I'm a 1/2 inch from the form or not. And, you know, rake. It's nice to have some material bulked up in front here so I can slough it back when I need to. I can kind of keep moving my way down. I'm going to have to get some more material here to keep grading it. I'm usually not very happy about bending over. I don't need to bend over to move this. I can just move it end to end, simple, and I can keep checking. I mean, we're pretty good. Need a little bit here. Some there. I can rake. And I'd rather be a little bit too deep than not deep enough. Tim's buying, so we'll just buy more concrete. And you know, you don't know who's going to be pulling in on this thing, a delivery truck or something. We'll snap. Let's see, what is today? It's the big old smoke out of 2020. I mean, Armageddon's here. Holy cow. The world is really weird. It's really smoky. But we want to get this done. The city has a little bit of leverage. They want this concrete done. They want the alley opened back up. They want the approved parking spaces in place before they give him this certificate of occupancy. And yes, I suppose you can move somebody in there before you get that, but Tim could get in trouble. That's their final piece of leverage to get him to do this. So here we are doing this. You know, he wants to rent this last unit. He can't do it until this is done. Therefore, here we are. And Tim had the asphalt folks come and say, yes, we can suture up against this when you're done. Told by an old carpenter, he said concrete waits for no one. And that's something to keep in mind. They probably wonder why I get so uptight when we're pouring concrete. It's because I can't afford to have anything go wrong. If something goes wrong here, ultimately it has to get torn up and reformed and repoured. It's very expensive. I have done that, and it hurts. And that's why I suggest that, you know, I lay in bed, I make sure everything's in line. I got plenty of time to get things ready to go. I have enough manpower to get this thing done. Concrete doesn't wait. The concrete does not care if I run out of gas, or if I had to make my lunch, or if my wife calls me, or all these things that are distractions for pouring this. I have to clear my plate, so to speak. This has to be my focus. Some things to keep in mind. This slab here, what I want to do is get it poured, get a broom finish on it, get some pure sealer on it to get it to harden up a little bit, put plastic on it, get the water sprinkler going on it to keep it cool, and I want to come back and cut the expansion joints tomorrow. We're going to pour it out of the chute of the truck. There's no pumper involved today. Access is good. I get the truck right up next to this pump or pour. The chute will be off to the side of the truck. Nice, you know, the driver can see me, provide instructions to him as to what I want him to do. We're going to start here and end down there. Basically, I will be out of the chute, placing the concrete probably 4 or 5 feet worth, fairly straight across, and then we will rod that. When I say rod that, we've got a screed here, a person on each end, pulling across the top of the concrete, you know, placing it at the proper elevation. The idea is not to pour so much that you're pulling a whole bunch of concrete. Obviously, you need the concrete to be higher than what you want it actually to be. So when you rod it off, you are lowering it the proper amount. If it isn't full enough, you're not pulling any material, and you're not getting it to the proper grade. You can't really see it, but I came in 3 feet, and I raised that up, and it came up 1 inch. Cut a little V in here. The idea is I'm creating a trough here, 3 feet off this edge. All the water from the asphalt comes in here. All the water from there comes here, and this whole thing is sloped towards the swell. I know Tim videoed some of the pouring out of the truck. I'm telling the truck to pull forward or back or wherever I want him to be. I'm telling him to spin the barrel faster or slower. That dictates how much concrete comes out of the chute. You know, as he rolls out of here, you know, it picks the chute up, which means it's more level, which means the concrete doesn't come out as fast. So I have to kind of compensate for that sometimes, have him lower it here or raise it there. That all dictates how fast that concrete comes out. And there are fins on the inside of that concrete truck that the concrete rides up on. That's why in one direction it's doing nothing but shove the concrete in the barrel. When it goes the other direction, it's riding up those fins and out the chute. So I speed them up, it goes faster. Anyway, sometimes it's as if there's only one, like one of the fins is broken off in the truck or something. You'll get a big old whoosh of concrete and something may be bent or broken in there, you never know. Austin and I were holding onto that rod screeding, and that's an important job on each side. It's good for you to have good communication and a little bit of finesse. And then the person mucking the concrete, making sure we aren't pulling too much concrete with that rod is very important too. When we pull too much concrete with that, not that we can't do it, but it makes the screed board bend. And when it bends, it goes up or down, one or the other, usually down, and digs too much. So the idea is for us not to be pulling too much, and that's the mucker's job to assure that. Next step is to run this bull float across there. What I'm trying to do is knock the big rocks down and smooth the concrete out. You know, when we rotted it off, you could see rocks and whatnot, and I'm getting it laid down nice and flat. I've done it a couple times, and what I'm trying to do is maintain this little trough we have in the middle, and it's kind of hard to do. I'm trying to keep pulling material away from that trough so I don't just end up filling it in. When I want to be aggressive and move material and, you know, work the surface up, I want to lay it, get it up on its edge. I don't know if you can see, but it pulls the little rocks up and creates a situation where the cream will rise and it will knock those rocks down. If I want this to start laying down flat, the flatter I lay this thing to the surface without actually grabbing it. You know, sometimes I do want to lay this down. If I want to move material, I can scoot it with the front edge of this bull float towards me. Doesn't work very good to shove it away. Anyway, working it flatter and flatter, get the cream worked up a little bit, blend into the last series of, you know, pulls and pushes that I did previously. I'm kind of working my way one way. The best results are when you use this bull float perpendicular to how you screeded it off, routed it off, right? We were probably less consistent, you know, we were probably up and down like this, so I want to go opposite of that, so I mitigate those high and low spots. I blend them all together. Working this bull float, I was jiggling it back and forth to help get those flat, and that's a good way to do it. It just takes a lot of energy. Real soft out here. So yesterday we got this thing poured. We took all the precautions to keep it from cracking until today. After today, we're telling it where to crack, so it will crack where we tell it to crack. That's why I'm putting these control joints in there, they're called. We're controlling where the concrete cracks. But I had to keep it cool so that it wouldn't crack before we got here. So concrete is fresh. We put a cure sealer on there, let that set up some, got plastic on it. You can't tell we ran water on here all night. It looks perfect. I'm going to be running my skill saw across there with a concrete blade in it. I'm going to be running some water with that to help wash away the concrete as I cut. And it keeps the dust down, a little bit of water does. If I ran my saw right on the concrete surface, you'd be able to tell where I ran it because it would knock the broom finish off. So I have this board set up. The idea is I'm going to run the guide of the saw on this guide that I've screwed to this other piece of wood. I'm going to go, do the math and figure I'll cut down about an inch into the concrete. That will tell it where to crack. That's a weak spot. Running my saw on this board, not on the concrete. That's just a way to do it. I could cut it on there and not care, but I do care. So it'll look real pretty when we're done.